Hello, everyone. I will give you a few minutes to log in. There are quite a few attendees coming through right now. Welcome to this wonderful session. We're very excited to share some of our knowledge with you. I see more coming in as we speak. Welcome, welcome. Looks like we're going to have a great audience today. I will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Sterling Martin Associates webinar series. This is our June session and we're very excited to present this to you. I would like to start by introducing the topic to you. Today is diversifying non-dues revenue strategies for growing education and more. I am just going to, well, let me introduce myself. My name is Jessica Kilman and I'm the Director of Client Services with Sterling Martin. So we are very happy to have you all here today. Just a few webinar housekeeping items. Your attendee cameras have been turned off and your audio has been muted by default. Also, the chat feature has been disabled. However, we do welcome and would love to hear your questions, and hopefully we will get to all of your questions during this 1 hour session. Feel free to click the Q&A button that is on your screen, and I will be monitoring that. And hopefully we will, be able to throw out some questions during the session, and then we will have a Q&A session at the end, welcoming any additional questions that would come in. If we can't get to your question, the last slide on this presentation has all of our panelists' information, their email address, so please feel free to email your question to them. They are happy to answer anything that you have. I will now turn it over to Brian Glade with Sterling Martin Associates.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and welcome everyone to our webinar series. Today we've got a great panel lined up for you, discussing the issues and challenges around generating non-dues revenue. We have 3 panelists, all association executives from different walks of life. I'd love to have them introduce themselves. We have Diane Enos, Marie Terniden, and John Torres. Diane, why don't you start? Introduce yourself briefly.
Thank you so much, Brian and Jessica. Hi, everybody. My name is Diane Enos, and I am currently the Chief Learning Officer and Executive Director at the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and have the responsibility of ensuring that we have the professional development, training, and practice advancement across all of our organizational units for around 120,000 credentialed practitioners and over 60,000 members. I've been with the organization for over 20 years, and prior to that was in a trade association management. And I will pass it over to Marie.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer at the American Society of Human Genetics. I'm responsible for the annual meeting, which gets around 6,000 folks attending, as well as all of our digital learning programming at the association. I've been in associations for 20 plus years, primarily around the education role. My last was at a trade association where we had hundreds of webinars and online programs, as well as several different face-to-face opportunities. John?
Hey, thank you, Marie. My name is John Torres. I'm the executive, and I'm the Director of Federal Government Relations for Agriculture and Environment at the Biotechnology Innovation Organization. We are the trade association for those involved in the biotechnology space, but most recently transitioned from a role of being the Executive Director and CEO of the Maryland Farm Bureau. And I've spent the majority of my career in the Farm Bureau or agricultural trade association worlds, where I've kind of built up a little bit of I'm hesitant to say expertise in the area of non-dues revenue, but that's what we're here to talk about today. So happy to be here.
Thank you, all 3, and we're looking forward to your presentations. As we talk with candidates, and if you don't know Sterling Martin, we are an executive, retained executive search firm, a national firm. We only do executive director, CEO, C-suite searches for nonprofit trade associations and professional societies. And so we're very much immersed in the association environment. Often when we're interviewing candidates before they get to the stage of interviewing with the client, we probe on their experience on the membership side. Another competency we look at is generating revenue. And we know just from talking with our candidates that and clients that there's a changed landscape. It was beginning before COVID, but certainly since COVID, where the reliance on membership dues, which had been somewhat traditional, is now being challenged and put to the test. Generating revenue from membership dues was always probably a sure way of generating revenue for the organization. In fact, ASAE data, which goes back to 1953, if you can believe it, there were associations even back in 1953, that 95.7% of total revenue was coming from dues, the fees that members pay, whether it's a organization or an individual, 95.7%. Recent data shows that the revenue generated by dues is around 45% for trade associations and down to 30% for professional associations and societies. So that's just a benchmark as you look at your own organizations and what the reliance is on dues. We certainly saw challenges for those organizations that were relying on their annual meeting during COVID, of course, and some have rebounded since then. But there's always been this pressure on dues as the safety net, which is coming under pressure, especially among, as we talk with our candidates and clients, especially among next generation and younger people who are looking at associations in a different way from certainly my generation and those since mine. And so today we wanted to just get in depth with three experts who have different perspectives on the idea of how to generate dues, whether it's outside opportunities with sponsorship or advertising, or internally trying to monetize existing programs for getting greater income. And so today we will have three presentations, and we'll begin with Diane to give her perspective on learning management system and how she was able to, with the Academy, transform just what you would think of as a platform for education into other sources of revenue. So let me turn it over to Diane for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian. And, each of us are going to just take a few minutes today before we really open it up for questions. So please keep that in mind. Ask all the questions that you want. So one of the things I want to share with you all is that back in the mid to early 2000s, not to date myself, we started really looking at how we move away from just solely being back in the day of teleseminars and webinars, just shifting into that webinar space where you just had that one-way communication. How do we more succinctly reach individuals kind of where they're at, where their needs are 24/7, 365? And one of the big things in that 2007, 2008 timeframe was that I saw in the director role that I was in at the time was that there's this learning management system or LMS technology that's out there, and how do we get our hands on that in order to kind of deliver content to our members? It really wasn't thinking about how to monetize anything. So we knew we needed to try to streamline how we were delivering programs and get that content out. Well, brought it forward, as we all know, new technology is really expensive. And the challenge was that we were a little bit ahead of the curve and we had to wait a little bit of time before we really could afford to implement a learning management system. And so when our proposed solution to the board was really looking at, we want to streamline our content, we want to have an end user experience, we want to grow our products and services, but we can't afford it. So what we really looked at on initial hurdles was the funding, and there's 6 of them on this next slide that you'll see that they're from a funding perspective, return on investment projections, staff skills, content prioritization, seamless integration, and customer support. Really what we started to think about is how do we go ahead And Jessica, if you could move forward, thank you. If you looking at that and saying, all right, how do we attack this? Because when we started looking at a learning management system for an organization our size, it was all going to have to be customized. Nothing was out of the box, and it was going to cost us at least $500,000 on the initial investment. And let's be honest, who has $500,000 that they can invest into something that you're not sure what the ROI is going to be? And so we pretty much said, this is a great idea, but not yet. So every year we looked at it with the budget. And eventually, at year 9, we were able to get it included with going out for a national RFP. And I'm sure all of you laugh and think, yes, I've had initiatives. It took me almost 10 years to get them to even commit to on a budget. And so we were able to take that concept of a learning management system, go into a national bid, and find something a bit more out of the box that was less customized. But we do have some ongoing considerations, which I have on here. And one of the things that we are always looking at is to look at how do we amplify digital recognition. A lot of you might hear of like digital badging. We look at e-commerce integration, customization of content and the user end experience, sponsorship and technical agility. And the reason I bring these up, and this is kind of the slide that I like to look at and say, this is where my team of amazing experts that I have the pleasure of working with every day lives, because we weren't able to increase our headcount for the staff. We basically had to say, if we invest in this learning management system, how do we use our existing staff and then use this technology platform to deliver? And what I can say is this: they have done an amazing job. And where our big wins are, and it's my last slide, is to say that the team has really blown it out of the box with the net profit increases. What has happened is our learning management system has become a huge non-dues revenue driver for us, because we're able to streamline the amount of content in there, we're able to turn product quickly, and we are able to leverage that in a way we did not anticipate. At first, we thought our learning management system was going to have around 8,000 users. And we thought that it was very safe to have that. At the time, it was about 15% of our members would be users. Right now, we're at 32,000 users, and that's unique users. And which means on scale, the more users you have, the less it actually costs you to provide them product. So we have found great product utilization through sales, bundling, you name it, and have really grown a net profit line item that used to be a teleseminar webinar series that we did back in 06, 07 that drove about 80,000 a year to really, if you bundle up all that content, well over $700,000 a year. And the overhead with staffing is flat. And so what we have is a daily, kind of user fee or an individual user fee that's very small. You sell one product and you're amplifying your profit exponentially. So those are our big wins. And I talk about that to kind of set you up structurally, thinking about what we did to leverage that technology. And I'm going to kick it over to Marie to go into a little bit more detail. And then John.
Great. Thanks, Diane, sorry. Like she mentioned, we're going to focus a little bit in on that online programming and talk a little bit about what's out there, what's available, then go into some strategy development, and then what you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about implementing these kinds of programs or this kind of non-dues revenue stream. Particularly, I'm focused on the online programming. So, you have all of these types of programs like traditional web seminars. They may be your legacy programs, like Diane talked about, the old telewebinar where you had the computer going and the phone on at the same time. Maybe you've morphed them into Zoom webinars or the like, but there's still that traditional sort of 1 hour, maybe an hour and 15 or 30 minutes seminars. If you record those, they can be archived, and another opportunity for you to sell them. And they can fill an on-demand library for you. So that on-demand seminar that you get two bites at the same apple when it comes to that sort of product development. And then you have your online classes. They can be synchronous, asynchronous. They're usually multimodal, as well as some certificate programs. So you may have an online class that ends up in a certificate that you can charge for because it has high value in your market area. And that will also help you in the future, perhaps need continuing education in order to maintain that sort of certificate over time. When you're thinking about that strategy of what you want to do in your online learning space, you really do need to think about your revenue drivers. All the activities, the products, the services, and the markets in your space that you know are really going to line up so that you can make this a real non-juice revenue activity. You need to also be thinking about, when you're creating your strategy, about not cannibalizing your other your revenue opportunities out there. You want this to be new money, not money that that folks were already ready to spend with you. So make sure you keep that in mind. And also you want to create content that it's unique, that they can access because they're a member of you. There may be reasons why you want to do some complimentary seminars, and you can think about those carefully and what makes sense for the strategy of your organization. However, you want to make sure that this content is unique. They're seeking you out. They are a member. They know that you are delivering value, and you can do this through that education, seminars, online, access to your LMS and everything else that's good with it, and everything that's available in it as well. And then finally, thinking about that implementation, that's where really, I hate to use the cliche, but the rubber meets the road. You've got to be able to deliver on all of these education opportunities. So you need to think about your audience. Who is this for? Is it for a member, non-member, a stakeholder, some sort of, young professional that you're trying to attract? And how does that content line up with that audience? Is it an urgent message? You need to know this law was passed right now. You need to know it. This is why. It's, if you're in a trade association, it may hit your bottom line of your company, that urgent messaging. Or is this evergreen? And evergreen would be, something that you need to know all the time. We used to have seminars at my last organization that we called the How to Write Gooder. Everybody needs to know how to write. It's a common thing in my last association that they want to write really well. And so that was an evergreen seminar that young professionals would come in and say, yeah, I really need to know how to write. And they would always take this, and it lives a long time. You don't have to re-record it. And so that helps you to have lower costs from an employee standpoint, getting these things lined up, and also allows you to have a large on-demand archive seminar library. And then finally, topical. These are topics that are really hot in your association, but there may not be that law passed yesterday. You need to know it. It's just something that's it's particular to your association. And then finally, when you're thinking about implementation pricing, how are you going to price out all of these opportunities, these educational opportunities? What is going to be a registration fee? How is it going to be sponsored? Perhaps you want to go a completely sponsored model where someone is giving you a grant of $100,000. Don't we all would love to have that $100,000 grant, and all that education is free to members of your association? Are you doing some sort of mixed model where you have a series of seminars that are complementary to your membership? That gets them into your LMS or into your roles as being interested in education. And then you're able to know what they're interested in, and you're feeding them other sorts of seminars that are along those lines. And that has a registration fee. That's sort of mixed model. And finally, you have that subscription model where, perhaps you're paying a one-time fee of $5 for the year, or $100 for the year, or $1,000, depending on your content for the year, that all folks have access to the education. So when I'm thinking about all of these things, what is the programming? What's your strategy when you're thinking about creating, and how are you going to implement it? They all come together, and thinking about that audience and the needs of your association when it comes to the content delivery. I'm going to pass it to John, who has a great example and to share with us about partnering.
Yep. Thanks so much, Marie. So when when I was executive director of Maryland Farm Bureau, I told a lot of partners that we have the common small association swan song. We have lots of needs and we have a very little budget. And how do we accomplish the mission of the organization with budgetary constraints, particularly in membership, as a lot of us are dealing with right now? How do we maintain membership? And if membership's declining, what is the effect of that declining membership on the bottom line? In a period of time when you need to be doing, for us, huge advocacy organization, we need to be telling our story and advocating for our members, and in our case, we're farmers. And so as we were trying to figure out how to increase advocacy, really around putting our members as the face in the forefront of telling their stories about what they're doing as a farming community, we needed resources to be able to do that a lot better than what we were. And so we had an opportunity to partner with several partners and create some member value in doing that. And for us, it was partnering with a private foundation out of Madison, Wisconsin, called the Sand County Foundation. And Sand County's ultimate mission is, how do we tell the story of American farmers and ranchers who are doing their job to be good environmental stewards while we're growing and raising our food? They're also caring for the environment. And for us in Maryland, that also means a big part of it is taking care of the Chesapeake Bay, the largest freshwater estuary in the Northern Hemisphere. And how can we be compatible with growing food so close to such a valuable natural resources? And so what the Sand County Foundation provided us was an opportunity to advance our mission, grow a program for our members, and then create member recognition while doing so. And so they came to us with kind of an ask at the same time, saying, hey, we got this nationally acclaimed program. It costs about $40,000 a year to administer. And they were very quick to say, we don't expect the organization, in our case, Maryland Farm Bureau, to provide that $40,000 up front. What the model is work with your partners and stakeholders to raise the funds, whether in cash or in kind, to add this program to your repertoire of telling that story and showing those examples of what's going on to add to your advocacy. And so we brought the stakeholders of Maryland agriculture together, which included the trade associations. So for us, those were commodity groups, corn growers, soybean growers, Maryland Forestry Association, those involved in protecting the Chesapeake Bay, and state government together, saying, here's an opportunity for us to tell the story of what our farming community is doing through this unique award that also provides 12 months of earned media that we don't really have to pay for. And so what we were able to do was bring in state government, all the associations and the foundation to collectively raise cash and in-kind donations to put this award out here. The picture that you see here is our award winners from this past year. They were awarded in December. These were our second awardees that we had. This was 2 years into the program. And it was trying to find ways to build synergy. We weren't really looking to raise money, non-dues revenue, for the sake of growing revenue for the organization. The goal was, how do we raise revenue to advance the mission through new and novel programming? So we weren't necessarily looking to put that earned money into our coffers, but say we're willing to partner with people to build a program that advances the mission of not only the Maryland Farm Bureau, but the collective stakeholders around Maryland agriculture and those involved in kind of environmental stewardship with what's going on. The unique thing about the $40,000 that it takes to manage this thing that is really appealing to our members is that of that money raised, $10,000 in cash goes to the winner of the program. So we've got the Carruthers family here, a young farm family in northeastern Maryland, who is trying to do some innovative things around conservation management on the farm. they were announced as the winner, and immediately they said, hey, we've got a new project on the farm that we're trying to fund. This $10,000 will go straight into implementing new conservation practices on our farm. We're not going to bank it, put it on our bottom line. We're going to keep advancing the mission of what's going on. Number one, as a member of the Farm Bureau, they saw value in that. So we're adding to the value proposition of the organization through these partnerships that we're doing. Number two, we're adding direct value to their bottom line. They're earning some money. And number three, we're helping to tell their story. These folks, the Carruthers family, are the face of farm conservation in Maryland for the entire year. They're going to be talking in committees at the state legislature, doing TV interviews, radio interviews, print interviews, those types of things, really elevating that core mission of what's going on. And so for us, raising non-dues revenue was really a function of extending our programming, adding value to members, and elevating the profile of our advocacy work within Maryland. And that's how we decided to tackle growing the organization, was through partnerships and generating revenue through those partnerships. So with that, I think, Brian, I think we turn things back over to you.
Sure. Thank you, John. And thank you, Diane and Marie and John, for informing us about your programs. Each one is different, but I do see some linkages. We had a couple of questions before I ask you. I'll take those from the audience. Thank you, audience. Diane, just to clarify, in terms of the pricing and the payment model, the offerings through the LMS that you have, these are fee-based programs, or is it part of your dues?
Yes, to both. So we actually have a mix. And initially, when we planned to implement the LMS, everything in there was going to have some form of cost to offset seat cost. So once somebody has a seat, though, in the LMS, whether they buy one item or 20 items during that time they have that seat, it doesn't cost you any more money. So the goal is to get the initial engagement in the LMS and then show them the value of that being available to them and meeting their needs when and where they have that gap of knowledge or practice or application need, and then saying we have all these other assets in here as well. So it's like almost like that upselling, but we do have some member value programs, some member benefits. And Marie, you gave some great examples about how if you need to turn something quickly, or if you want to have something go out right away that might impact policy or whatever, that you might need to get something out and you might need to put it out to all members on a live event. And then we'll put the recording for free for members as a member benefit into the learning management system to view on demand. That sounds like an initial investment, but what happens is that when we see them go in there, you want to then reach out to them and say, thank you for engaging. Hey, have you also thought about looking at some of these other programs that we have? So you do that collaborative kind of marketing within the system. And what we have found is we've had great success in getting people, once they get into the learning management system, they become engaged and they will buy product. So the majority of our content has a fee associated with it, but it's significantly cheaper as a member than it is as a non-member. We make it a member value across the board.
Right. And Diane, could you, you talked about the 9-year, 10-year gestation period. Can you share, if you feel comfortable, what is the LMS you chose, and maybe what are some of the other ones you looked at in that RFP process?
Yeah, we chose one, and we kind of laughed about this, as all of us speakers were. We used one that we did not have to have a separate API integration. We actually picked one that synced up with our CMS or our AMS, and that we use YM or Crowd Wisdom, your membership line, and it's branded to us. It's called Eat Right CPE, and because of healthcare continuing professional education, and it's it works very well. It looks rather cumbersome on the back end, but the front end manages the continuing education very well, ties with their membership profile, so it automatically integrates. If you're a member, the discount price comes in. If you're not a member, it knows that from your AMS, and it's all synced up on the back end. Makes the user experience much easier.
Thank you. And this question is for both Diane and Marie. In terms of the content itself, how much, what would you say is the mix between content that you've generated internally, maybe by your members, and that which is externally generated? And do you have to pay those who, the authors that might be providing content to your offerings? How does that work?
So for my organization, my previous organization, we about 50-50. We had content that we generated internally where we use subject matter experts from our volunteers from committees who volunteered their time and allowed us to use their knowledge to create programming. And that programming was really in that evergreen bucket because we knew that it would be able to live along a little bit longer and would be able to withstand that test of time and require not so much volunteer engagement and staff engagement to keep it going. We did also do content that was from outside, where we brought outside vendors who were adjacent to our industry to present on-demand seminars for us. And we did not pay for that. Oftentimes we have rigorous education rules because for engineering, there is a professional development hour. And so they have to maintain that education standard, but often they were talking about a service that they might at the end might provide. So we knew that it was also a marketing opportunity for them and a learning opportunity for our membership. So we didn't pay for those kinds of speakers. A small portion of folks who didn't fall in either one of those categories, we occasionally gave an honorarium to. But this was very occasionally and usually had to do with such a specific knowledge and content base that it really required that level of knowledge, that kind of professional expertise that we had to pay for.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting, Marie. I think that we are very much in line with kind of how you look at that. We do most of our content is we pay in some way as SME, a subject matter expert, for their content, for the time, and they develop those presentations specifically for us. I will say though, with our learning management system, we have such a wide range of products and product types now that, for example, we have 3 years of content in there from our annual program that we captured on site. Now we've realized we also need to capture the talking head with it. So you do that investment on the front end with capturing it as opposed to doing the live stream for all of your sessions. It's much more affordable to capture it. And then you can sell bundles or individual sessions or whatever for those who can't attend, or for those who attend and you want to give them a discounted price in there. So that's part of our live speaker agreements as to what that content may live as in the learning management system. Then you have individual self-studies or live programming that we do that we may have a different tier of a stipend or an honorarium. And then we also have some that's licensed content that's not specific to our practice. So if it's outside food, nutrition, dietetics, and it's more in the business or non-didactic realm, then we can license content and bring it in and pay a licensing fee. And there may be sometimes where people will think, oh well, everything should be free to members. Not when you have over 1,000 products in your learning management system. There is a certain amount that you provide value in your membership, like that aligns your strategic plan and your core and some of those. Everybody needs to know this content. Yeah, that's going to be something that we want to get out to everybody and can be free. Just because it's free doesn't mean people are going to do it. Just like if you have people sign up for a free live webinar, you'll have 100 people sign up, and you'll usually only get 25 to 40% come on. But if you charge for it, even if it's a $5 fee, they make a commitment and they actually participate. And so when I say we charge for it in our LMS, it's a low cost. And we do that because there's also all the back end management and requirement to deliver that product. So we do our revenue based on scale, not based on charging an obscene amount for an individual product. Ideally, we want them to have multiple products they're exposed to at much lower cost than having somebody buy a really expensive product. So we found that has worked very well for us, and we don't get member backlash because our content is good. It's very good, and we take pride in that, and we want to have the global experts.
I think you really stated it right there, Diane, that it really is, if your content is good, there really won't be that backlash. We found the same thing. We charged, and we probably charged more than you were charging. And that is also to recognize a difference between what was out there that was just free, and free everything that wasn't very good. And ours, we had registration fees for some of the seminars, and it really was to also signify that there is value here. And that was an important thing to say and communicate to our members. And we didn't get any pushback.
Yeah, if I could piggyback on that, even though this is not what I talked about, when we were in COVID and we had to do a lot of, because there was a lot of noise during COVID. There was a lot of regulations if you were a regulated community about what you could do and couldn't do, and it was changing by the second. And what we found was, if we could be that place of trusted information, if we could be the place in our webinars, which we did charge for during that period of time, if we could be the ones that said, yeah, Farm Bureau is the one that's going to eliminate the noise, get us the important information when we need to get it, there was no problem in members saying, yeah, we're willing to spend the extra money because we don't have the time or expertise to sift through the noise ourselves. And they saw great value in that, and they've since built upon that. If you manage the quality of your content, your customers will be there.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point, John, which gets to another question. And just having had the experience of COVID, where everything had to go online, and there was a feeling that things had to be free. How do you go back from that? And what would be a healthy ratio of dues to non-dues, do you think, in the post-COVID years? This is for all three of you. What should that ratio be from the leadership positions you're sitting in?
For the product mix?
Well, say the dues versus non-dues. If in 1953 it was 95%, what do you think is
I honestly think each association has its own unique needs based on the structure of the organization. So the more branched an organization is, in my experience, the more ways you need to be driving revenue in, because you will never be able to drive the revenue you need for operations and all the other expenses for an organization solely through member dues. That is very much of a misunderstanding with many people who join organizations. They think that their dues should provide the funds for everything that takes to run that organization, advocacy, you name it. And so I would say, personally, in the organizations that I've worked in or worked with, at least 50% of your revenue is coming from elsewhere, from dues. But that is just my experience. Some do not have to rely on that, but we rely on more than 50% coming from non-dues. And when we say non-dues, that's a myriad of things. That's grants, that's foundation, that's through credentialing, it's through our accreditation arm, it's, so it's through non-dues revenue and product generation, it's through our live meeting. Our annual meeting is our largest non-dues revenue generator. It well exceeds anything we bring in through what the Center for Lifelong Learning. We have a separate line item for our annual meeting. And so, but taking what you have and flipping it into other asset areas to drive additional non-dues revenue to kind of amplify if you're investing into something within your organization, how can you make it live longer? That's the question I think that any organization can ask itself. Is there something else we could be doing, even if it's free for our members to show member value, even if it's out there? And I saw that, that I see a lot of organizations having that question, that conversation. If we're investing into this, how do we make this live longer?
I think part of that too is also having a benchmark of where you are today. Diane, you talked about it took you 9 years to get your LMS up to speed. When we were in COVID, like all of us we were 100 and at the time 105-year-old organization. We were still doing things the way they were doing it 105 years ago. So we did not do a good job of incrementally investing in technology at the time. And so when the environment forced us to, we had to think about how much of the budget we were going to invest in tech upgrades. And I know you had spoken to that. So you got to figure out where your organization is, where your budget is, and where you want to go, and recognize you can't do it all overnight. You've got to build a plan to get there. For us, when I left, about 30% of our revenue was membership dues based. The rest of it was non-dues based sponsorships, other meetings, those types of things. And so you got to look at your income mix and figure out what you have now, figure out what you need to get to where you are, where you want to be, and then build a plan to get there. It's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, John. It's really interesting to see how those different pieces come in. But Maria, I saw you just unmuted yourself, so you go ahead and go.
I was just going to build on something about coming out of, where were you before COVID? Where are you now out of COVID? We happened to be in a lucky upswing where we had just implemented our LMS. We were already rocking and rolling with a lot of web seminars and online seminars. And so during COVID, we were primed and poised to take advantage of the moment. And so it was very good for the association because we could turn quickly to do that and provide our members with a lot of value through education, through on-demand libraries. At one point, I think I was talking to the board about, we're like your Netflix streaming service. We're 24/7. You need your ethics question, and you're trying to get your license 2:00 in the morning. We're here for you. So it was, we were poised to take advantage of that. And I think you do have to look at your opportunities in front of you and be able to take advantage of a moment. And coming out of COVID, knowing that there is a lot of Zoom fatigue. I thank you all for joining today. There's a lot of Zoom fatigue. This is one of 5 meetings on Zoom today. And understanding how to meet those those users in your LMS, those members, those needs of theirs when they may or may not want to join another online meeting or watch another web seminar. How are you marketing and communicating why yours seminars have value, and then also utilizing what's involved, that you already have in your LMS, tags, everything to know that what they want, what they're looking at, so that you're continually serving them up what they know, what that they want to hear about.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. One of the things that this raises is, I know it was rather simplistic to say what's the appropriate ratio, because it all depends. But how have you seen what your non-dues revenue strategies have done to promote membership? Is there an element of conversion of those who might be paying more, Diane, in your example, paying more for a program because they're a non-member? Is there, have you seen a conversion? And John, this could apply to you too, in terms of the grants. How is the conversion going in terms of getting people to join, or even a retention element to it?
Yeah, I would say we probably see it more on the retention. The more engaged that you have a member, the more apt they are to renew. If you lose a member, it's very hard, as we all know, to recapture them. But there's many, depending on the type of organization you work for, that you're going to see that natural cycle. So a lot of times you see the natural pattern of, oh, this person has 24 to 18 months left before they have to renew their credential. they're more apt to come to your live meeting or all of a sudden start buying bundles or whatever. So we try to look at a variety of different facets to target market to both members and non-members as to trying to meet them where they're at and understanding what they really are looking for. Where I've found actually our largest conversion is for people to rejoin is that when they go to sign up for our annual meeting, because what we have done with the price structure is that for a member versus a non-member, it is significantly cheaper to rejoin and reactivate your membership and then sign up for the annual meeting than it is to pay the non-member rate. And we do that very much knowing that that's an intentional decision we have made. And so we know who our target audience is, and that one is our largest conversion point.
Right.
And it works very well. And we do have metrics for that. I would say because of our pricing being as low as it is in our learning management system products, we don't necessarily have the data to support saying that that's a great recruitment piece unless you start seeing multiple purchases. After you buy 5 or 6 items, then it might become more worthwhile. But until you hit that point, you could still pay the non-member rate because of our pricing.
I do want to give a little perspective from a trade. I'm sorry, John, did you want to go? From a trade organization perspective, sometimes it's more of a retention tool than a recruitment re-up tool. Oftentimes you're in your boards and your committees, you're dealing with a certain level of a company or a firm, and you might not be able to penetrate down into that company or firm. And so these type of programs allows you to show your value to a company or firm much throughout the organization, up and down, not just the CEO or just the C-suite. And so then you have people who are on your committees who participated in your education. And when the CEO says, why am I writing this check? Your folks are saying, well, because we get a lot of value. And it's not just them that go, not just the CEO who's going to the annual meeting and joins the board that is seeing that value. And so it really is a great retention tool.
Good point.
Yeah, and I think I'll give an example of it. I think you can do it both on the LMS side and the continuing education side. But for us in the awards program that we have, we when you give $10,000 away to anybody, you get people's attention, but you are also able to hold them up as a role model for the rest of your membership community. And for us, what we saw was people saying, wait, I'm doing what they're doing. You put these people up on a pedestal, well, I can do that also. And for us, we saw people start coming out of the woodwork that we hadn't heard before that were potential members. Now, the award we created was not limited to members, but it gave us a platform, and we put it at our annual convention as a way to hold members up, give them some profile, and that drove membership. And I know we have not even touched on this, and I don't even think it fits in this discussion, but for us, that award ended up driving some DEI initiatives for us, because we saw some people come out of the work who were traditionally not engaged with us, who said, wait, I'm doing what you're doing. I want to be engaged, but I've never been invited to the table before. And this seems to be a way for me to get engaged. And so for us, it was kind of that additional externality of driving interest that led to more engagement and more membership.
John, I wanted to follow up too, because this is an area, in non-dues revenue, we know that there's, sponsorships, advertising, and the like are pretty traditional. But I'm wondering how many association executives think that, funding, obtaining grants is so specialized, and it doesn't enter into their thought processes in terms of what's out there for them. And maybe it's dependent on the sector they're representing, but as you went through this, was grant funding already part of the DNA at the Farm Bureau, or was this something new for your strategy?
It wasn't because, and I think as Diane pointed out, the mentality has always been membership dues will drive everything that we do. And we found ourselves in a position where we needed to look outside of membership dues. I will say I've always been cautious when it comes to grant funding, for the main reason that whoever is issuing the grant, you are essentially expected to do work that they're trying to drive, right? Not necessarily your own association's work. And so when you look at grant opportunities or partnership opportunities find those that closely align to your organization's mission and goals. Because if you're chasing grants just to raise money, you might find yourself in a position where you're doing work that is not related at all to your core mission of what your association should be doing. So you've got to make sure that there's good alignment there. And for us, working with the Sand County Foundation, while they were providing kind of the staffing and the logistics behind it, what they were doing was directly aligned with our message in environmental stewardship. And so that wasn't a problem for us. We were essentially helping them do their work, but it was work that we wanted to be engaged within anyway.
Thank you, John. Another area that I wanted to probe is just the how did you develop a strategy? Because each one of you has a different background, whether it's in professional development or government relations. And here you are, at the helm of running, identifying and implementing a strategy for non-dues revenue, which may not have been part of what you thought your career would end up doing. So how did you develop the strategy? Did you do it alone? Is it something that it's your job to come up with this, or how did you develop the strategy, and then before you had to even implement it? Marie, I'll start with you.
So I think that and it may sound a little bit trite, but it does all flow from your strategic plan of your organization, your mission and your goals and your vision. And all of this has to align to that. And that's where your markets, your services, your audiences are. And then once you have an idea of that audience and the content that aligns with the overall strategic plan, then you can start to strategize on where do you want to be in your your educational and professional development programmings or certifications, and then how do you I use the word exploit them, so that you can make sure that you're realizing the most amount of revenue for each one of those product lines. In many ways, it's thinking about product sales and deriving a sale to each element. But it really does start with that mission of the organization, because if that doesn't align, then you're never going to sell anything. No product's going to be of interest, and they won't find value there. So understanding that first, and then developing a strategy around that when it comes to aligning all of these products and services that you might be able to derive revenue from.
And it sounds to me like your experience has been a collaborative one. Is that right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that you can't, we were talking about this earlier, you can't do it alone. I mean, it's not you in a vacuum of education programming or, non-dues revenue sitting there trying to dream up ways of how you're going to make the next, $1 million. It really does take the whole team, your volunteer leaders, understanding your content, helping to promote different content, what's new and needed in your membership by way of content. It's you thinking of the strategy of ways to make sure that that content is communicated, that it has value and can sell. Your marketing team making sure that they understand what the content is and how your members will receive it. Maybe you have an advocacy team making sure that they are pushing that out as well, or if there's something that's very urgent or unique to your organization, feeding that back to you so that there's constantly a loop of new ideas and new ways to drive that revenue from an education or online programming point of view.
Right. And another question for the group, in terms of the education programs that you are providing, what would you say are the trends? What, if there's a takeaway for people here to know your experience in format, longer, shorter is more popular? Is it live? Is it recorded? Is it lecture? Is it interactive? What can you tell us about what you're seeing as the trends that are most attractive to your members and non-members?
I'll give you a couple from the farming community, because farmers are unique individuals to work with. Offer live, record it, offer it recorded, Do not give access to non-members until some time has lapsed, right? To create that member value for the members, and give me a specific skill set that I can use from that content that you share with me. Is it a regulatory compliance thing? Tell me exactly what I need to do to become in compliance, or give me the contact people or the resources so I don't have to hunt for those on my own. That's adding value to that content going forward. But live recorded, hold on to it for your non-members until, use that as a kind of a hook to get them involved. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was going to say, when you were listing them, Brian, I was going to say the answer is yes. Yes, every learner is different. So, I mean, this is from the adult learning in itself. You'll see some, most studies will say an adult learner, after 18 minutes, you've lost them. If you don't have some engagement, some touch point, something that shifts their brain into a different way of learning, that you've lost them. So if you're used to doing a 30-minute lecture, you've lost them halfway through. Mm-hmm. So you just kind of need to be able to own that, and understand that, but everybody learns differently. There was a phase where there was a lot of gamification that was being built into everything. But I say that, well, there's a lot of bells and whistles out there in the instructional design and adult learning space. Know what you need to deliver at your core and build around that, because you may think that you need to have a very savvy product, and the reality is that's not at all what your audience wants. They want 15 minutes. They want something they can do on their phone or shift it over to the web. They can go to their tablet. You have to understand how you have to design it, and then, which is a whole other conversation than today. But if you know what your end product needs to be and how people are going to use it, you design it to meet that need. So you can usually do most of your live content flipped, unless it's a workshop. If it's hands-on, you're going to need some video integration in there, and that starts to cost a lot of money. And so you have to really think about what's needed, and if there's any firewalls on your end user space. We have a lot of clinicians. You don't want to develop something that a hospital is going to block. You have to think about where people are going to use it, how they're going to use it, where they're going to tap into the content, if they need to shift between different types of devices. All of that is part of the conversation, which is why I would say, if you're lucky enough to have the team that I have, who thinks through all of that, and nobody came to the table with that skill set, surround yourself with people who ask a lot of questions. And your team, we've been successful because I have a great team. It is not at all about the people who are talking here today. I'm sure it's about all of our colleagues that have been working on it, getting us here. And so it truly is something that I would say, listen to them and listen to the customer feedback and be willing to be agile and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Do not ignore user experience design. Do not ignore it. I know you all want to focus on content. User design and experience is extremely important. Do not ignore it.
John, I'm picturing a John Deere tractor with a Starlink on it. So as she's riding along, she's watching a webinar, bush hogging at the same time.
So, it's funny. I see a question that just kind of popped up, and I get this question a lot. Okay. And it says, how big is your team? And I have a team of four with over 1,000 content products supporting 60,000 members. And they also do our live annual meeting, which had prior to COVID, 10,000 live attendees with over 300 speakers. They are the most amazing, dedicated team of individuals. And I would say, find and build yourself a team who are dedicated to excellence, and it will all come together. Just hire the people that fill your gaps. I didn't hire a bunch of people like me. I've hired a bunch of people that would hold a mirror up in front of me and say, we need to do something different. So I would say, just really think about it, and just hire people who really are creative.
I agree with that 100%. I had a team of 2. We did 100 web seminars a year. We had a 300 web seminar library, 8 multi-module online programs, and 2 certificates. It can be done, and the live meeting. So hire for hard work and people who aren't like you, who can really get down and do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are at the end of our time. Unfortunately, I know we've only scratched the surface of this this non-dues revenue discussion. But I thank you all, Diane, Marie, John, for sharing your experience. We've put your emails up. Thank you for allowing open access to you. If anyone wants to follow up and get more information directly, there are your emails. Jessica, thank you for moderating us and keeping us on track.
You're very welcome.
Our
And thank
team
you all
of-
for joining. We had a great, everybody stayed on. We didn't have anybody leave. So you must have given a lot of great information. So everybody can take it and roll with it. So, but thank you all for joining. Please join us for our next session in July. Information coming soon. So keep an eye out for our social media posts and invitations that we will send out to you. When we close the browser of this webinar, a survey will pop up for you. We'd love to hear your feedback regarding our session. I feel that it was a wonderful session. So please provide us some feedback and how we can improve and any new ideas for any of our future Sterling Martin Associates webinar sessions. So again, thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.